Back on the Freelance Report with Gianna Volpe, brought to you in part by Michael Evans, author of The Matrix, and by Maximus Health and Fitness, 130 East Main Street in Riverhead. Let's bring on our second guest, East Hampton Town Supervisor Larry Cantwell. Good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm good today.
Excellent. So we had you on because we want to talk about all of the stuff that's been going on out in Montauk. 5 arrests since Friday. On Sunday, you had, 400 surfers lined up along the beach protesting the rock revetment, it's geotextile bags filled with the sand from the natural dune. Is that correct?
No, the sand that's going in the geotextile bags is actually quarry sand. It's not coming from the beach itself. The beach sand that will be excavated in order to make room for the geotextile bags will be stockpiled, and the natural sand from the beach will be used to cover the bags.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay.
Well, but let me ask you this. It seems to me that this is kind of, as I understand it, it's a project that is supposed to deal with an erosion issue that happened during a storm several years ago along the beach in Montauk. Apparently the downtown is threatened by what has happened there, isn't it? Am I right so far?
Oh yeah. No, look, I mean, there's certainly some long-term erosion in this particular area of on the beach in front of downtown Montauk. And, with, the recent storm impacts, including Sandy, sea level rise, and other factors, or threatening, really the entire downtown area is at stake here in a severe storm. Look, we were lucky in Sandy out here on the very east end, even though we had severe impacts. The storm, the center of the storm was really, Nassau County, New Jersey, parts of western Suffolk. And we dodged a bullet there, but still we saw, major impacts along our coastline, and so we're looking ahead to the potential for any severe hurricane, and the potential damage in downtown Montauk would be severe. I mean, downtown Montauk's one of the few real downtown areas that's in such a low-lying area.
Right.
Throughout Long Island.
And I mean, if you look at, all right, so if we made this like it was like a football game, there's been several flags on the play. You've got federal lawsuits. There's a lot of lawsuits already. You got the protesters. Is any of this stuff affecting the project's completion? I mean, where do you stand? Do you stand in a different place than you did, since last weekend began? Where are you as far as where is the Army Corps standing right now?
Well, look, and the Army Corps is proceeding with the project. They're on. This is an $8.5 million project.
Contracted with H&L.
It's been publicly vetted for over 2 years. We've had 10 public meetings regarding this project, and the concerns that have been raised recently, and the people who are responding to it are, they care about the beach, and we respect that. But at the moment, this is a federally funded and contracted project that's under construction. And, whether or not that can be pulled back is the question that's being asked of the town board. And we are having conversations with the Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, there are consequences to...
right. What are these legal ramifications, for not honoring the contract with H&L?
I can't answer those questions specifically, and since some of this is subject to litigation, it's not even appropriate for me to discuss parts of it publicly.
Well, then let me ask you this: what happens? Because you were going to say there are consequences, and I'm assuming what you were going to say was there are consequences to not continuing with the project.
Well, look, in many ways. I mean, I'll give you one example. This project, is an emergency stabilization project that is designed to be the first step towards a final solution, which will come from the Fire Island and Montauk project, which has already been authorized and approved by Congress with, I think, around $800 million in funding. That project promises to bring to Montauk a project that everybody wants, which is a major, beach replenishment project, with dredge offshore, pumping sand onto the beach and creating, the beach that everybody wants. But, in some ways, this project, or that project, the final solution is predicated upon, the Corps' completion of this step, which, everyone knows is not ideal, because, really the final solution is the best solution, and this is only a part of it.
Southampton Town has embarked upon beach restoration project. They just did one that stretched from I believe Watermill to Sagaponack. Is that the sort of and of course there was one in West Hampton Dunes about 20 years ago. Is that the sort of, and that's being contemplated now in Quogue, is that the sort of thing that we're looking at ultimately, Supervisor Cantwell?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean, everyone agrees that, beach replenishment with sand is the best solution. But for this project, that was not an option. The Corps came up with their cost-benefit analysis, presented options, and basically would only do this project, which includes the geotextile reinforced sand dune. So the town's choice was this project or nothing.
Why is that? And I mean, we had Thomas Muse on East End Beacon saying that, he doesn't accept the idea that the Army Corps pushed for the project, that this was a closed-door deal that actually comes from the previous administration. Bill Wilkinson, I mean, was this something that you sort of inherited coming in?
Well, look, the project, or the planning for the project certainly began before we got into office, but I think everyone should remember that during the past 2 years, during my administration, we've had 10 public meetings where this project was discussed, presented, and discussed. So it's not a backdoor deal in terms of where we are today because of the public process that we've gone through.
And I mean, at those public meetings was there outcry? I mean, just based on this past weekend and the protests that have been going on, I have to imagine, especially also Kevin McAllister's suit with Defend H2O, I had to imagine that there were people, speaking against the project.
There were, and there were also many people who were speaking in favor of the project.
Okay.
I mean, the breadth of opposition that is, that we're currently seeing was not, anywhere near, what was witnessed by the board during the past 2 years that, the project has been under review. And look, and I understand that. I mean, look, people tend not to focus on things until they get started.
Right.
That has certainly evoked a lot of emotion and concern on the part of some people in Montauk, and they're certainly entitled to voice their opinion about this. The question really is, what are the options at this? Given where we are today, what are the options? And those options are very limited. And, you have to, the town board has got to consider what the consequences are here. We're dealing with an $8.5 million project that's already under contract. Abandoning this project is going to result in, damages and costs. Who's going to incur those costs? And, what happens to the town's standing in trying to work with the Army Corps of Engineers to get the final project done, which is the Fire Island and Montauk Point Beach Replenishment Project.
Well, let me ask you this: Kevin McAllister is quoted as saying that he would favor a policy of the government's buying up valuable waterfront property and letting erosion take its course, nature take its course. Is that a viable? That can't be a viable. That's not a viable option, is it?
Well, look, long term, from a planning point of view, the town is doing a coastal assessment and resiliency plan, and those are the kinds of long-term planning issues that you've got to lay out in light of sea level rise, what are the projections that can, of potential here over the next 10, 20, 30 years? But, for now, you're dealing with 13 or 15 property owners. These are large-scale motels, and you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in property values here. And, certainly the town doesn't have the resources to implement a plan such as that. Plus, you have to weigh, look, and it's more than just, the oceanfront motels. I mean, the entire downtown Montauk area, is the business center of Montauk, and the economy of Montauk is dependent upon it. And, it is threatened, too, by what could happen along the coastline here. I mean, we're fortunate to have dodged a bullet in Sandy. If that storm had hit us head on, let me just finish, had hit us head on, we'd instead of talking about this project today, we'd be talking about implementing and rebuilding the entire downtown area of Montauk.
Well, Supervisor, the only thing that I was reading this morning, some gentleman was talking actually about South Jersey, about towns in which the natural dunes were actually, taken away, that were devastated after Sandy because of that. So,
but and I understand that. But look, in the downtown area of Montauk, you're dealing with legacy development that was done many, many years ago, before many of the environmental and land use protections that we have in place today were in place. And the fact is, we didn't create this development. This development has been there for decades. And that's the situation that we have. Of course, I mean, in hindsight, all those dunes should have been protected, and there shouldn't have been any development right on the coastline to begin with.
Right.
But that is not the set of the circumstances that we have today.
Right. I mean, you were surprised. Today. You were as surprised as anyone. I remember seeing your reaction to the photographs that James Katsipis, who was one of the...
Well, look, I think, the excavation of that particular dune is very unfortunate and surprised me. But that does not depict what's happening for the rest of the project. The rest of the project, there is no dune cuts involved at all. I mean, this is at the western end of the project where this dune structure ties back into the dune. And while
I see.
Very unfortunate that this happened, that is not an example of what's going to happen throughout the rest of the project, which is about 3,000 feet in length.
Before we wrap this up, it's funny because we're dealing with, essentially the shoreline in Montauk. You never hear this stuff about Coney Island, which is a barrier beach. Do you ever notice that, Supervisor Cantwell? It's like, I don't know how they dodge the bullet all the time, but they do.
Well, look at what happened here to Breezy Point and
you're right.
Long Beach. I mean, look at the devastation that occurred as a result of Sandy, which was really barely a tropical, barely a Category 1 hurricane.
Right, you're right.
We've got to prepare for those kind of hurricanes and even greater ones along our coastline. And certainly, look, preventing development, in some cases, eliminating development, all those have to be on the table in terms of the planning that we do for Long Island. But there are situations where, in Montauk as the example, you have an entire downtown business center, that is in a very vulnerable area. Right. How do you replace that?
Right. Well, Supervisor,
how do you replace that if you don't try to protect it? And look, it sounds corny in terms of being between a rock and a hard place, if you will, here. But to some extent, that's where we are. And the choice of the town right now is to, move forward with this project or do nothing.
Right.
And doing nothing is not an option here.
Well, Supervisor,
we certainly want to work with the people who are concerned about this project, and try to accommodate their concerns, and we will do that to the extent that it's possible. But this is a multi-jurisdictional project. The town is there's a local sponsor, but this is a federal project of the Army Corps of Engineers in cooperation with the state of New York. The county of Suffolk is involved in this in terms of their sharing part of the local burden here for maintaining the project. So you got different levels of government together, and to the extent that the town controls this project, that control is somewhat limited.
Right. Well, you've definitely got your hands full, and thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about this stuff. So looking forward to having you back sometime. Bruce?
Thank you very much, Supervisor Cantwell.
Take care.
Be well. Thank you very much, sir.
You guys have a good day.
Thank you.
And Bruce will be back on with Ed Romaine today?
Ed Romaine after the news.